you down there! I'm Lyxe, a 662-foot tall axolotl kaiju girl. I can breathe underwater and have incredible regenerative abilities, typical of axolotls. I have a long tail that I could theoretically use as a weapon, and of course, I have huge feet to flatten and crush anything under. My best friend Ryung is an Asian giantess, dedicated to helping planets in need. But Ryung has been missing for several months, and I am very worried about her. I search for her everywhere, and do not hesitate to use Ryung's portal technology to search for my missing friend, even on distant planets. Although I've been unsuccessful in my quest so far, at least I've been able to help others in need. Well, I also had a lot of fun when I admittedly wrecked some cities, but I was really able to help a lot of people too. You don't believe me, because I'm just a huge destructive monster, right? How could a giant kaiju girl like me do any good? Here is an example. I saved the inhabitants of an entire planet that was about to die. I was able to evacuate most of the planet's population before it was destroyed by ruthless miners. As a gigantic creature that can get even bigger due to the size-changing and giga-growth technology of my high-tech bracelet, this task was quite manageable. I put many people in my backpack, carried others with my hands, and even picked some up with the soles of my feet so they stuck to them. And I brought them all into my world through the portal, where they are safe now. I can look back happily and say that I saved as many people from this planet as possible. The people of this ancient civilization were very grateful, even though they initially thought I was a giant monster from hell. Now they're all just happy to be alive, even if they have to get used to the planet of Mogora, my current homeworld, where all of nature is vast and gigantic compared to humans. However, that should suffice as a brief introduction to myself. I hope you enjoy the following story.
Mogora. Homeworld of Ryung and Lyxe, and pretty much a main base of operations for her and her giant friends. However, not only she and her troop are massive, everything on this planet is huge in comparison to their normal counterparts, plants, creatures, fungi. For a common human, even a blade of grass can be as tall as a skyscraper. Luckily for the people on Mogora, pretty much all of them are kept in safety thanks to Lyxe's hospitality. During her various missions, she has amassed quite a collection for herself. A collection of various civilizations and countless people living in meticulously crafted glass boxes on the floor of her garden. What started a small collection of few glass boxes and maybe thousands of people was now consisting of several million people and hundreds of glass boxes. Lyxe was always very proud of that collection, of all the people she saved over time from various perils. Observing them living their tiny lives, working, eagerly rushing to various places in their minuscule cities beneath her overwhelming feet. The giant people and tiny humans lived in harmony. Sometimes even, when Lyxe was coming home from a long mission and had dirty feet from various reasons, she would open one or two of the glass boxes and ask the people below to clean her soles. Most people were more than willing to do that. Lyxe has saved their lives, and their current, enclosed lives were infinitely better than what they had on their old worlds. With Mogora's nearly endless resources, food, access to knowledge and technology hardly found anywhere on these planets, people were gladly helping cleaning the straight-up massive feet of the monstergirl and often her giant, human friends. This was one of those days. Gulsan and Lyxe has finally come back home from a long and unusually drawn-out mission. The resistance and fight was surprisingly fierce. They came back with quite dirty feet. The two have approached the garden civilizations and Lyxe pulled the lid up from around 4 boxes. In that way, both she and Gulsan could put one of their feet into one box. With a smile, Lyxe asked, "Hey, think you could help us out a little?" In a gentle, calm voice, upon seeing people in all these boxes rushing to converge, Gulsan giggled, "I think they can, come on." And with that, they carefully brought their dirty soles up and sat down in a comfortable spot, keeping all of their feet just low enough to allow people to reach it and clean, all while showering them in the heat and occasional sweat. Lyxe never asked people to actually lick her soles, but at the same time, she wasn't really stopping some fanatics that kept doing it, or people who were licking off the remaining food, be it berries, grapes or anything Lyxe or Gulsan helped to crush to a pulp. Tiny humans didn't want to waste anything, so if they had to lick the rest of the food off the sole, they'd do it. Relaxed, 2 giantesses looked at one another. I didn't expect them to put up so much fight, even less to have an actual large weapon to defend themselves. What would they do with such a cannon? Gulsan asked. Lyxe shrugged, "I don't know, but I know they won't use it." Though it's impressive they needed so many people to even operate it. And I'm glad we went together, splitting attention made it much easier. The two kept talking, either about missions or some small things, while pretty much mostly ignoring the countless people gathered beneath their looming stalls. Mostly, because they kept one thing in the back of their mind: don't lower their stalls. Not that it was much of a threat, thanks to the technology bracelets, but they already learned that cleaning doesn't go as smoothly with people stuck to their stalls. But, due to the ignorance, they weren't paying much attention to what is going on down there, and some people loved serving the giantess, their savior, and doing their absolute best to keep her happy. The others were indifferent, not really hating the tasks, but not thinking much of them either. It felt like paying off the debt they owed to the beings that saved them from various threats. However, some started complaining about their miserable lives, as they kept observing the dumb, naive, and pitiful workers beneath their oppressor, serving her at every whim. The voices began to whisper, "What is this life? We are trapped here like bugs, like museum expositions, like damn ants in a terrarium until they need their huge disgusting stalls cleaned, at least with water and not with our tongues. Look at these maniacs who lick instead of using normal water and enjoying this, literally cleaning someone else's dirty, sweaty feet. Gross. Ugh, I still feel this disgusting taste after we had to lick the food stuck to this monster. I'm gonna throw up." And when they get bored or walk around, we are supposed to just accept getting stuck to their disgusting, sweaty stalls. Screw this. I thought my life was miserable, but this is utterly humiliating. Look at them, licking and being happy, literally cleaning someone else's feet. Are we destined to be stuck here for this monster's amusement until we perish? Is there really no other way? Another man said. Lyxe is just an arrogant dictator. She probably thinks she has the whole world in her hands. As if our entire planet is in her open palm and we are nothing more than dust and dirt. But she's wrong. We have rights too, and while some of these voices weren't necessarily wrong, as people more often than not were getting stuck to either Gulsan or Lyxe's soul when walking around the garden. At the same time, it was incredibly tough for the giantesses to treat the people respectfully due to the size difference. Even if they tried to be careful, some stray tinies were bound to end up stuck to someone's soul eventually. That behavior, of treating them like bugs, fueled anger for some people. They began thinking that all rules set in place by Lyxe were just there to keep them in place, to keep them trapped. Nevertheless, these, and multiple more whispering voices were muttering either to themselves, or between one another in the shadows, alleyways, outside of everyone's sight yet still covered in the looming, dripping soul. Every now and then, some people would find a hidden resistance member. They wouldn't approach anyone, only those that were visibly angered by the entrapment, that were calling it out, even to themselves. Some people began conspiring with a desire to build a secret, underground resistance. They wanted to collect and then use the very knowledge on the planet against the oppressors. To create, collect and gather potential weapons that could defend them against the monstergirl. It felt like big, massive prison encased in a glass, and for them, Lyxe was the warden of this hope-forsaken prison. But to say that resistance was united would be an overstatement. There were multiple bases scattered all around, some people conspiring on their own. In one of the bases, 3 people were sitting and listening to the booming voices of the giantesses. Some unshaken by it, some with visible anger. There was Aryla, taken from her home, desert planet, Faringa. When the resistance started to form, she joined without a second thought. She was sympathizing with them. She didn't trust Lyxe at all. She hated being treated like a worthless bug, and being stepped multiple times in the past made her hate the giant oppressor, or rather her gross, massive feet, even more. She often sneaked out to the garden to scope out the surroundings, look for a possible escape path, to try and move out, but more often than not, she'd just end up beneath either Lyxe or Gulsan's soul, stuck until they realized something was amiss. Least she wasn't getting crushed to death. The garden was a safe zone to walk around, but it wouldn't prevent anyone from getting stepped on, either on accident or not so much. However, anything beyond the garden? That was the forbidden zone, which Lyxe told them to not go there, and most people listened. Aryla wasn't one of them. Some people were okay with those rules, others would sneak out of the glass boxes to purposefully get themselves stuck to a massive soul, and others hated it, but most couldn't do anything about it. Arila wanted to change it, to tear off these chains of oppression and just live free. She was sitting in the corner, angry. At the table there was Mirko, a boy from now forgotten, antique planet, Antharo. Lyxe saved millions of people from a certain extinction that was inevitable. Planet was destroyed, so he doesn't really hope of coming home, not that it's been all that bad here. He was afraid of Lyxe, due to her immense size, but he couldn't help but be thankful that she saved him, his family, his friends mere moments before the planet was obliterated. However, he doesn't feel really comfortable around Lyxe due to the fear. Especially since she was claiming to be just a monster, not some goddess. He didn't really like the idea of being at the mercy of a monster. He loved adventuring and wanted to become warrior one day, but he knew that in this glass city, it won't really be possible, so he joined the resistance in hopes of achieving his dreams and maybe getting away from the scary monster. Across the table was Yoko, a Japanese girl, also known as Mirko's new girlfriend. She was collected when Lyxe was playing with her friend, Ginormica, in Tokyo. Yoko was in a kaiju club and was utterly overwhelmed when she first saw Lyxe, but unlike many others, she wasn't afraid or mortified, rather excited and in complete awe and appreciation of the massive monster girl. She always loved kaijus, and this was like a dream come true. When Lyxe was playing with her friend, pretending to be a big evil monster and pretending to fight Ginormica, much to the amusement of many, especially people in the kaiju club, and visiting Tokyo at the same time, Yoko got stuck to the massive soul and got even more happy and excited when she learned she is alive. Upon coming into this world by accident, Lyxe kindly apologized and offered to bring her back, but Yoko enjoyed it, so she wanted to stay, and in hindsight, that was a right decision. Now she was happy that she found a great guy like Mirko from another world. Two strangers in an unknown world, entangled in love. They were listening to the voices, either coming from inside or barely discernible from outside, all while Lyxe and her friend were getting their souls cleaned. Hearing all of this, Arila had pretty much the exact same opinion. When she figured that countless people are now pretty much washing their massive feet, she was feeling her gut twisting. It was disgusting that their oppressor enjoyed humiliating them so much. She bolted up and shook her head. Screw it, I'm leaving. Yoko and Mirko weren't exactly thinking the same, considering one liked the giantess and second had countless people saved from extinction thanks to Lyxe, but the curiosity was getting a hold of them. Yoko looked at Arila and asked, "Leaving? Where to?" Arila approached the table and kept looking back and forth between the two. "Think about it. We were for how long? Weeks? Months? Years? And she still forbids us from leaving this whole garden area. She wants to keep us trapped in one place. There have to be some secrets out there. At this point I'll take living anywhere else on this planet than here. Hell, there may be some other native civilizations or their ruins she doesn't want us to see." She didn't trust Lyxe at all, and after all this time, she believed it was impossible for them to be the only people living here. She took a deep breath and continued, stepping away from the table, "I'm going into the forest. I'm prepared for a long trip, and I'm ready to uncover the truth. Join me or not, I'm not staying here any longer." She finished. Mirko nodded and muttered, "This may be my chance. For an adventure and to become a warrior. I'm in," he said, and Yoko joined him instantly. She did feel bad leaving the massive monster girl, but she also knew Mirko's love for adventures and his dream, so she didn't have the heart to leave him alone with that. Mirko took his trusty sword and began following Arila with Yoko. Arila looked through her shoulder and scoffed, "A sword? What do you hope to achieve with this pathetic tool? Haven't you seen them? They are massive. You think some toothpick-sized weapon is going to do anything to them?" Mirko shook his head and explained, "I wouldn't dare using that against Lyxe or her friends, but we know nothing about this planet. You can't dismiss dangers lurking out there. Lyxe said it would be dangerous, and even if you don't trust her, it's better to be safe than sorry." Besides, Mirko smiled and looked at Yoko before looking back at Arila, "It's not your usual sword. It's a power sword." Yoko learned and used some of the technology here to install it in the sword, and it can shoot lightning now, so it should defend us before anything can come close. Yoko was pretty skilled with electronics, so she was more than happy to modify Mirko's treasured weapon after learning what she can do. the three of them stood in front of the exit, but as they talked, a group of young, nosy adults gathered with them. They wanted to join them. Aryla sighed, as she planned for a lonesome journey, but there was no turning back now. She looked at everyone and called, "Listen up. We leave as soon as our captors move away, when we can leave this glass prison without their supervision. It's still day out there, so we should be able to navigate easily. Our target is the garden, and from there, we'll see what we can find. Stick close together, don't wander too far off, and under no circumstances alert our oppressors. Follow these rules or get lost." She sounded pretty scary and powerful, but it seemed to work. Most of these people had enough of Lyxe suppression. Patiently, they waited for the giantesses to leave. Once the time has come. The small group led by Aryla, Mirko, and Yoko left the underground hideout, and upon double-checking that no giantesses are around or overseeing their glassy cages, they proceeded forward. Between the buildings, through the alleyways, until they were finally standing in front of the glassy door. A gate to the freedom, they passed through, and even though they didn't walk too far, everything looked massive. It felt as if though they were shrunk, but they knew it hadn't been the case. No, it's just the planet. They are normal and the environment is colossal. Trees, mushrooms, grass, everything was towering over them. It was intimidating, but at the same time, pretty relieving. Aryla was happy to finally be outside of the entrapment, in this vast forest where something, or someone else may be waiting in hiding. Mirko's adventure mode made him love the first feeling of fresh outside, and there was Yoko who went along due to Mirko, but she was the most nervous out of the three. She didn't like the idea of ignoring, of defying the monstergirl's rules at all. The rest of the group kept sticking close to one another and following Aryla. They kept wondering what's going to happen. What will they discover in this vast, overwhelming place? Fear, excitement, nervousness, amazement, happiness. Though the emotions were different in all of them, they were united by one thing: awe of the huge, magical nature surrounding them. The long journey began. The longer they walked away from their glassy cages, the quieter it was getting. The often bustling, slightly noisy cities were disappearing, and the eerie, mildly terrifying silence, only broken by an occasional whisper or audible noise of amazement, surrounded them. The planet couldn't have been that devoid of life. However, considering their size, Aryla and her troop was silently hoping to not meet life other than them or the giantesses. They didn't exactly have a goal or destination. They were following Aryla, Mirko, and Yoko, who were looking for anything else: life, ruins, other people. Anything. The seemingly hopeless endeavor continued for a few hours, with an occasional break to check on everyone's spirits, rest and recover before proceeding further. Deep in the forest, Aryla has finally noticed something. Well, whether it's for good or bad, was yet to be ascertained. Full of hope, she rushed forward. Mirko and Yoko followed her, and before the eyes of the three were some old huts. It was hard to tell how old, but it didn't matter now, not for Aryla at least. They were destroyed. Going even deeper, Aryla looked with disdain and disgust as the massive footprint in the middle of village, footprint that precisely resembled the massive foot of Lyxe. Aryla scoffed and said, "I knew it. I knew I was right. Do you see this?" She asked Mirko and Yoko, who were looking at the deep footprint and ruins. "She doesn't allow people to leave. I'm sure they escaped, created their own sustainable life, and once this giant monster found out, she destroyed them without a second thought. Obedience or death." Aryla continued, speaking to everyone. She looked at the side and noticed what once was the wall with very crudely written, "True Freedom." Aryla pointed at it. Was it the name of this colony, or their main rule? Whatever is the reason, that giant, cruel creature didn't care one bit. Some of the group started to believe Aryla. Everything she was saying, in their eyes, was making perfect sense. Even Mirko started to get suspicious of their savior, but Yoko was unshaken. She shook her head. "Any proof? That footprint is a proof. What if there was a threat to this planet and she was just fighting it off? Maybe back then she didn't have the necessary technology and did it by accident? We only have your words and mine to fight with, not any single proof." She still believed in Lyxe's good nature and harmless, protective vibes. As the two were quarreling, Mirko slid into the footprint. It was cold and rough, must have been here for a while. He started looking through the ruins. there was nothing, everything seemed to be destroyed with the powerful step. He was going to give up. Until something unusual caught his eye. Upon closer look, it was a map. He took it and left the ruin, calling out, "Hey, knock it off. I've got something." Arila and Yoko stopped arguing, and once Mirko made it back up, he spread out the map. "Incredible," Arila said. The map was yellowish, probably due to being aged, but it was showing the surroundings pretty clear. If this is the prison. And if we are here. Then the shortest path leads through here, Arila kept muttering as she scanned the map, trying to find a peculiar place marked by multiple circles, but it didn't say that it was a secret? Treasure? Safe haven? They could only know if they check it for themselves. Arila picked up the map and nodded. "All right, we're moving out. If these ruins and this map is anything to go by, we may find what happened to all these people if we are lucky." The group accepted, and after short gathering, they moved out, following Arila, who kept guiding them with a map in hand. Even deeper into the massive, dark forest, the sky was blocked by towering grass blades and branches with leaves and fruits high up above. Some group members were starting to get exhausted, but they were fueled by curiosity, by the desire to learn about what happened to the destroyed village. Some were starting to get afraid. The silence and relative darkness caused by light barely passing through the branches, grass and rocks, started to seep into their minds. Arila kept moving forward, until she froze and whispered, "Shoo. Do you hear that?" Everyone listened in, and indeed, some strange buzzing in the distance. Buzzing that kept coming closer and closer. Then, crashing through the grass blades, the buzzing became powerfully loud and the source became clearly visible. A massive bug that seemed to have set its eyes on the multiple minuscule prey below. Everyone was terrified and tried scattering away, hiding everything. Who knows that the hell it was, a planet-native bee, fly, mosquito or something else. All they knew that it was huge and angry. If they could barely stand a chance against this, there was no way they could stand against the giantesses. One girl of the group has gotten injured when the monster dived at her, but it only grazed her arm, as the other group member, a boy, shoved her aside and stood in her place. The cut was deep, but the girl was alive, the boy also, but bug captured it and started flying away with its freshly caught prey. Mirko stood in fear for all this time, but he wanted to become a warrior. No warrior just stands and looks as a monster massacres his companions. He took out a sword and caught its attention. With lightning and agile movements, he kept fighting off the bug. The bug, having the boy with it, was more defensive, until it finally backed off. However, still with the boy, Mirko was angry, but there wasn't much more he could do. The bug was out of the lightning range. The scattered group gathered back together and rushed after the bug, even the injured girl. He saved her life, so she'll be damned if she just lets this disgusting creature take him away. They were so engrossed by the chase, that they didn't hear or feel much else. A massive shadow loomed over them and the true horror played in front of their very eyes. The bug was crushed by the massive gulsan. But with the bug, the boy was crushed as well. They were terrified as she was taking her sweet time doing this, pressing her sandal deep into the ground, grinding it back and forth and giggling. Gulsan went to the forest in search of some fruits and maybe minerals, just in case, and once she was standing there, playing with the bug carcass at her soul, she picked up some fruits from the trees. Little did she know that the bug wasn't her only victim. In everyone's ears were echoing noises of both the bug and boy being crushed. The group went into terrified haywire, turning back and running as fast as they can, as far away from the giantess as they could. Arila, Mirko and Yoko were at the front, running forward and little to the side. However, as they soon learned, staying in place and hiding may have been better. Gulsan started following the tinies, completely unaware of the tinies, and due to that, her one single step has crushed almost the entire rebellion group. She didn't feel much, and she continued on her usual path, picking up fruits and minerals she could find on the way. Obliviously leaving horror in her wake, Arila, Mirko, and Yoko managed to survive. They were just a few centimeters away from the sandal when it came crashing down. They were left unharmed, but flew a little forward and across the muddy ground due to the shockwave from the stomp. As the giantess continued her casual walk, the thundering noises echoed in their ears. If there was anything good about this situation, is that the giantess probably scared off any nearby creatures. They stood up and after quickly checking if all three are okay, they rushed to one of the steaming shoe prints. They sworn they heard multiple bones crunching before they were sent flying. They didn't want to believe that. But only seeing would make them believe. They approached the massive shoe print. Arila was furious. An entire group that was accompanying them twisted into impossible positions and pressed deep into the muddy ground, left forgotten like some sort of trash. Arila pointed at it and was screaming out, "See? Do you see this? They don't give a damn about us, about normal humans. We are only insects waiting to be crushed for them. Hell, she's probably gathering people so she can set them all free at one point and go on a great insect hunt. Ugh. This is why I wanted to go alone." Yoko approached her and shook her head. "This was an accident. Do you think she has seen us? She was after the bug and resources, not you. The girl looked into the shoe print, at the gruesome remains of people she was looking at mere seconds ago and puked out in disbelief. She knew Arila couldn't be right. Could she? Arila ignored the disgusting sight and was more motivated than ever to follow the map and uncover the secrets. She scoffed, "I'm going deeper. We can't do anything for them, but I am not returning to this glass prison like some sort of bug. If you want, head back, I'm not going," she said and started going forward, not caring much if Mirko and Yoko will follow her. Mirko wasn't sure, but between returning to the glassy box and living in fear of Lyxe and uncovering the truth like the true adventurer, avenging his fallen comrades like a true warrior, he chose to go after Arila. Yoko didn't really want to, but if Mirko is going, most she can do is keep him company. She was sick in her stomach. The horrifying sight engraved itself into her mind. She knew Lyxe and her friends are good people. That it all was just a one big accident. But doubts began to sink in. The three kept going through the forest, relatively peacefully. The presence of a giantess seemed to give them a path safe from any threats. It took a long while, but they finally arrived at the place marked by the map. The sun started to settle and the darkness was setting in. If they can't find a safe place in this spot, who knows what lurks in the darkness? At the marked spot, there were some ancient ruins, with buildings fitting normal-sized humans. However, everything was incredibly old and rusty. For all they could know, it was a long-forgotten civilization that disappears hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And that in and of itself wouldn't be that surprising, however. There were also quite a lot of high-tech stuff. It couldn't have been older than a few years at worst. There must have been other people here. And they must have been here not so long ago. Not that anything high-tech was working here, but just seeing it and knowing it exists gave Arila a newfound glimmer of hope. It was hard to navigate through the ancient city as everything was overgrown with moss, towering grass and occasional massive branch blocking their path. Trying to get into the buildings from different sides, most were shut tight with no other way to get in. Well, crushing walls could probably work, but they didn't have the time nor the resources for it. There had to be somewhere they could go in here. Mirko was using his sword to cut through the grass and moss blocking the paths, until a faint light caught Arila's eye. "Mirko. Here." Mirko and Yoko approached her and noticed it too, hidden behind a thick layer of moss. Mirko took a large swing few times, setting the source free from the moss and they were looking at a high-tech door. The light indicated that it's still working. How was it even possible? Arila stepped forward and the doors opened. Taking a deep breath, the three rebels stepped in as the door slowly closed behind them. The insides were lit so they could somewhat tell where they are and it seemed it was an incredibly futuristic base. But abandoned and forgotten, yet everything was still working. It was a far cry from the old village or initial city buildings, but what the hell happened here? End of part 1. The original story was written by Elusive Sparrow. Link in the description. Here's a little preview of the next part. Arila and her friends uncover more secrets. But this leads to almost more questions than answers. They find a hologram that closely resembles one of Lyxe's friends. They also meet other rebels and eventually a fight breaks out between them and Lyxe. You can find out why and how this all turns out in part 2. We hope you've enjoyed the story so far. For more, subscribe to our channel and check out our Patreon page. Thank you.